Shalom Aleichem, Mishpachim. We are in the fifth Aliyah, the fifth Torah reading in the book of Genesis, the Parsha Mikeitz. This is Ankelos on the Torah. All right, fifth, 19, is it 19? 19. Starting verse 19, chapter 42. Torah on top, Ankelos on the bottom. Verse 19, chapter 42. Torah. If you are trustworthy, let one brother continue to be confined in your secure house, while you go bring the grain lacking in your houses. Verse 20. Torah, bring me your youngest brother, so that your words may be verified, and you will not die. They did so. Verse 19. Ankelos, your secure house. Scripture uses house here and in verse 33, although it is absent in verse 17. Rashi notes that the pronoun your denotes the prison where the brothers, being addressed by Joseph in the second person, are currently confined. Lacking in your houses. The Aramaic softens and clarifies the biblical starving households. Ibn Ezra, take to your households that which is lacking because of the famine. All right, verse 21, Torah. They said to one another, in truth we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw his trouble when he pleaded with us, but we did not heed. We did not literally accept him. Therefore this trouble came on us. Verse 22, Rashi, Torah. Reuben replied to them, saying, did I not tell you, do not act improperly against the lad? But you would not heed, you would not accept. Behold, now there is a claim for his blood. Verse 21, Ankelos. In truth, the Hebrew aval can connote the plaintive cry, alas, as in 2 Samuel chapter 14, verse 5, and 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 14. However, here, and in chapter 17, verse 19, Ankelos renders the word as an assertive, in truth, or assuredly. Thus, the brothers are portrayed in a more favorable, manly light. Heed. When the Hebrew term here is used figuratively for accept, as in verses 21 to 22, the Aramaic substitutes the second word. In verse 23, here is retained in accordance with the context. Verse 23, Torah. They did not know that Joseph understood, literally heard. For an interpreter was between them. Verse 23, Ankelos, an interpreter was. Scripture has the interpreter with an apparently superfluous definite article, letter Hey, the. Biblical style frequently uses the without obviously intending a specific item or person. When this occurs, the Targum usually deletes it, as it is done here. See also verses 27, 32, and 33, where the one becomes one in the Targum. See the appendix for the treatment of the text by the Samaritan Bible and Septuagint. Rashi, based on Genesis Rabbah, considers the definite article as an indication that the interpreter was an important person and identifies him as Joseph's son Menashe. Ankelos adds was to create a more fallacious phrase. Verse 24, Torah. He turned from them and wept. Then he turned back to them and spoke with them. He led Simeon from them. He led Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. Verse 24. Ankelos spoke with them. The Targumist typically transforms to into this discursive with, following, spoke. Led. Ankelos translates the Hebrew verb took as led, as it is a more appropriate verb in reference to humans. Simeon. Why was Simeon chosen? Rashi and Radak suggest that he had been responsible for tossing Joseph into the pit. Bound him before their eyes. Rashi and Radak, based on Genesis Rabbah, envisioned that when the brothers left, however, Joseph retrieved Simeon from prison and cared for him. Verse 25, Torah, Joseph gave orders to fill their vessels with grain, return each man's money to his sack, and provide provisions for their way. It was done so for them. Verse 26, they loaded their grain on their asses and left there. Verse 27, one opened his sack to give fodder to his ass at the lodging house. He saw his money, and behold, it was in the mouth of his bag. Verse 28, Torah, he said to his brothers, my money was returned, and behold, it is also in my bag. They were confused. Literally, knowledge departed from their hearts, and in terror one spoke with another, saying, what is this that the Lord has done to us? Verse 27. Unkelos 1. The Aramaic eliminates the Bible's definite article, as in verse 23. Rashi identifies Scripture's the one as Levi, who was now bereft of his usual accomplice, Simeon. Ibn Ezra identifies him as Reuben, the firstborn. Lodging house. The Targum adds house, as in verse 17. He saw his money. Only one brother opened his sack at the lodging house. The others waited until they returned home before opening the bundles. In the mouth of his bag. The Bible uses the form amtachat 15 times in this episode, but nowhere else in Scripture. Onkelos interprets it as a bag, which is supported by the Assyrian matachu, to bear, or to carry, or to lift up. And Sarna notes that the adverbial befi, at the mouth of, is used to modify the bag, amtachto, but not the sack. It must be assumed that the bag was inside a sack. Verse 28, Onkelos, knowledge departed from their hearts. Our Targumist adds knowledge to supply the missing but implied subject, since Scripture considers the heart as the source of knowledge. See Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 3. The brothers did not know what to think, and they were frightened. Spoke with, since spoke is implied. The Aramaic accordingly and characteristically changes to the more respectful with. Elohim is replaced by the Tetragrammaton. Verse 29, Torah. They came to their father Jacob, to the land of Canaan, and told him all that occurred to them, saying, the man, the Lord of the land, spoke harshly with us. He suspected us as being spies of the land. Verse 31, Torah, we said to him, we are honest, we are never spies. Verse 29, Onkelos told him. Radok notes that the story the brothers told their father is essentially the same as the events previously recorded, although, as is customary in biblical repetitions, there are additions, deletions, and changes. Verse 32, Torah. We were 12 brothers, sons of our father. One is not. The youngest is today with his father in the land of Canaan. Verse 33, Torah. The man, the Lord of the land, said to us, this is how I will know that you are honest. Leave one brother with me, and take the grain lacking in your houses, and go. Verse 34, Torah. Bring your youngest brother to me. Then I will know that you are not spies, and that you are honest. Then I will give you your brother, and you will trade in the land. All right. Verse 33. Did I read this one yet? Yeah. Verse 32. Onkelos, one is not. As in verse 13, the Sadi Agon paraphrases as one is lost. Verse 33. Did I read verse 33, Torah? Verse 33, the man, the Lord of the land, said to us, this is how I will know that you are honest. Leave one brother with me, and take the grain lacking in your houses, and go. Verse 34, Torah, bring your youngest brother to me. Then I will know that you are not spies, and that you are honest. Then I will give you your brother, and you will trade in the land. Verse 33, Onkelos, lacking in your houses. The Bible terms this as starving household. Verse 34, trade. Biblically understood, move about. Verse 35, Torah. It happened that when they were emptying their sacks, behold, each man's money bundle was in his sack. When they saw the money bundles, they and their father, they were frightened. Verse 36, their father Jacob said to them, you have bereaved me. Joseph is gone, and Simeon is not here. Now you intend to lead Benjamin away. All these things have befallen me. Verse 36, Onkelos, is gone, is not here. Our Targumist has chosen not to repeat words if it can be avoided, even when Scripture has the repetitions. Thus, although the biblical enenu is not, describes both Joseph's and Simeon's whereabouts, Onkelos uses different Aramaic phrases for each one. Lead. The Targum substitutes lead for take when referring to an animate being. Verse 37. Torah. Then Reuben spoke to his father, saying, "You may kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him to you. Give him into my hand, and I will return him to you." Verse 37. Onkelos. You may kill my 2 sons. Ebenezer quips that had Reuben made an intelligent offer. If Reuben had made an intelligent offer, Jacob would responded. As is, Scripture records no response to Reuben's offer of his sons. Verse 38. Torah, he said, "My son will not go down with you because his brother is dead and he is left alone. If death should befall him on the way that you are going, you will cause my gray hairs to descend to Sheol in sorrow." Verse 38. Onkelos, death. Onkelos is more specific than the Bible's term accident. Sheol. Sheol means grave. All right, as we all know that after every chapter finishes, Onkelos has highlights and some beyond the text questions. Onkelos highlights chapter 42. In chapter 42, verse 36, the Targumist uses 2 different terms for the repeated biblical phrase, enenu. Why does the Targumist generally avoid repeating words in his translation and provide alternative translations of words that are repeated in the Bible, for emphasis or to poetically enhance commonly spoken language? This is a practice that seems to be contrary to the view of Rabbi Ishmael, which the Targumist accepts, that biblical language is meant for human understanding, and, therefore, repetition need not be shunned. However, the Targumic methodology that the Targumist adopted ought to be viewed as a personal choice of style that is unrelated to the controversy of Rabbis Ishmael and Akiva regarding the sanctity of each and every word in the Bible. The translator simply did not feel comfortable with poetry and repetitions. His stylistic license allowed him to translate as he did, and should not prompt scholars to derive more profound lessons from this practice. Beyond the text. Note the commentary to chapter 42, verse 1, that analyzes many ways to interpret the word titra'u, looking at each other. The commentator's multiple explanations provide us with new insights regarding the dynamics within Jacob's family life during those difficult times. We can understand Jacob's impatience with his sons, but the view of Rashi and other commentators who share his view is more difficult to understand. Would Jacob have sent his sons on a dangerous journey to Egypt just for appearances? How then do we explain the statement in chapter 42, verse 2, that has Jacob declared that his sons should go down, that we may live and not die? And how would Jacob and his family have had food when Canaan also suffered from the famine? Was Jacob justified in not sending Benjamin to Egypt in chapter 42, verse 4, thereby again showing favoritism to Rachel's child? Was there not a danger that Jacob's other sons would feel jealous of Benjamin, even as they were once jealous of Joseph? Why didn't Jacob learn from his tragic experience? Continuing the beyond the text. It is hard to imagine that Joseph's brothers could not recognize him. Are the opinions of the commentators convincing? Can you suggest other possibilities? Again, we wonder what was in Joseph's mind. Why didn't he reveal his identity to his brothers and reconcile with them at this time? What prompted Joseph's brothers to respond to the accusation that they were spies by mentioning the loss of Joseph? Was this reasonable? Can you account for the revelation by your understanding of human nature? Can you think of other people who act in this way? In chapter 42, verse 21, we hear that the brothers associated their current problem with an event that took place years before. This is a case of guilty conscience, which often causes people to see their misfortune or tragedy in terms of punishment for past misdeeds. Would you say that people who have a guilty conscience are more apt to be moral? Is it healthy? Psychiatrists might say that having a guilty conscience is akin to having poison in your system. Get rid of it. Would you agree? What is a conscience? Is it something to cultivate or to ignore? How can it be cultivated? Joseph's brothers report in chapter 42, verse 21, that Joseph pleaded with them before they committed their dastardly act. But there is no record of that in the original account. Was this a figment of their imagination, or do you think it is true that when the Bible retells a story, it reveals facts that were not included in the first iteration? There are literary or psychological reason for this technique. Do you find it intellectually stimulating? How is Reuben's "I told you so" response helpful? Chapter 42, verse 22. Doesn't it only make the person who says it feel less guilty? Do you find that people who make this statement actually had the power to prevent what they said would happen, but were unwilling to exert their influence? Jacob bewails his fate in chapter 42, verse 36, but never assumes that there is any connection between his inappropriate show of favoritism of Joseph and his current plight, unlike his sons who relate their evil behavior toward Joseph to their grievous problems. Was Jacob being self-righteous? Did he ever confess his own mistake? Something to ponder on. All right. Here we go. New chapter 43, verse 1. The famine was severe in the land. It happened that when they had finished eating the grain that they had brought from Egypt, their father said to them, "Return and purchase some grain for us." Verse 1. Onkelos, severe. Why did the brothers wait until the famine was severe? Judah advised them, "Leave father alone until the grain is just about finished. Then he will be willing to send Benjamin to Egypt." Verse 2. Onkelos, finished. The biblical term is kilu, which is finished. Our Targum texts read kads fiku, which Rashi recognizes as incorrect because the verb would then denote satisfaction. The feeling that one has eaten enough, as in chapter 24, verse 22, where the camels drank water until they were satisfied. Rashi therefore suggests kad she'tziu, which is finished, as the Aramaic rendering. Similarly, Zecharias Frankel suggests that an error crept into our Targum text when a scribe transposed the letters pei and samek, for the original text read pasku, which is finished. Grain, the biblical Hebrew is shever. Return. Jacob's complaint in chapter 42, verse 36, that his sons bereaved him, shows that he did not believe their story of Joseph's disappearance and felt they were responsible. He told them to return to Egypt now without Benjamin, because he feared that they might harm Benjamin as they did Joseph. Verse 3, Torah. Judah spoke to him, saying, "The man warned us, saying, 'You will not see my face unless your brother is with you.'" Verse 4, "If you will send our brother with us, we will go down and purchase grain for you." Verse 3, Onkelos, unless. Rashi translates bilti here in verse 5 as if not. Our Targumist interprets it as except when or unless and inserts when, which he felt was implied. Verse 5, Torah, "If you do not send him, we will not go down. For the man said to us, 'You will not see my face except when your brother is with you.'" Verse 6, Israel said, "Why did you do this evil to me to tell the man that you had another brother?" They said, "The man asked us about ourselves and our family, saying, 'Is your father enduring now? Have you a brother?' We responded to these words. Could we have known that he would say, 'Bring your brother down'?" Verse 7, Onkelos, enduring. The Targum renders scriptures nichye as live in verse 8, but uses the verb endure here in verses 27 and 28 because of the context. The term endure suggests physical and mental vigor. Now have. The Aramaic adds these unexpressed but implicit words. See verse 9. Verse 8. Torah, Judah said to Israel his father, "Send the boy with me, and let us get up and go, that we may live and not die. Also we, also you, also our children." Verse 9, I will be surety for him. You may acquire an accounting for him from me. If I do not bring him to you and set him before you, then I will be guilty to you forever. Verse 8. Onkelos, and not die. Judah argued, we do not know if Benjamin will or will not be seized and enslaved by the Egyptian ruler. But we do know that we will die of hunger if we do not go. Therefore, let us focus on what is certain. Also, we, Ibn Ezra and Radak, explain that biblical Hebrew can place the adverb also before the subject, as in Judges, chapter 8, verse 22. Verse 9, Onkelos, will be. The Aramaic supplies the tacitly understood, although unstated verb be. Compare the additions in verses 7. Forever, the biblical understanding rendering is all the days. Rashi maintains that forever includes the world to come. Verse 10, Torah. If you would not have delayed, we could have returned by now twice. Their father Israel said to them, if it is so, do this, take some of the praiseworthy fruits of the land in your vessels, bring them down to the man as a present, a little balsam, a little honey, gum and laudanum, pistachio nuts and almonds. Verse 10, Onkelos, wood. Onkelos adds the word pun to the phrase, an implied auxiliary verb indicating the subjunctive mood, would, could, or might. It appears frequently in Aramaic, but has no specific Hebrew equivalent. Verse 11. This is Torah. Their father Israel said to them, if it is so, do this. Take some of the praiseworthy fruits of the land in your vessels. Bring them down to the man as a present. A little balsam, a little honey, gum, laudanum, pistachio nuts, and almonds. Verse 12, Torah. Take double money in your hands, and bring the money that was returned in the mouth of your bags back in your hands. Perhaps it was an error. Verse 11, Onkelos. So, Rashi maintains that the Bible's epho, now, is a redundant adverb used in Hebrew to ornament the verse's language. The Aramaic substitutes the adjective so. Praiseworthy, the picturesque Hebrew figure of speech, which the Targum explains is literally that of which all sing. Verse 13, Torah. Lead also your brother, and get up, go back to the man. Verse 13, Onkelos, lead. As usual, when take describes the escorting of humans or animals, Onkelos substitutes the less aggressive lead. 14. Torah, may El Shaddai grant you mercy before the man, that he may release to you your brother, your other brother and Benjamin. As for me, as I am bereaved, I am bereaved. The men took this present, and they took in their hands double money, and they led Benjamin, and they got up and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. Verse 14. Onkelos, El Shaddai. Release. The Aramaic clarifies the significance of the Hebrew term send. Other brother. Nachmanides imagines that Jacob did not mention Simeon by name and called him other brother, because he was still angry at Simeon's unbecoming action against the Shechemites in chapter 34, verse 25 through verse 30. Nachmanides also maintains that this is why Jacob abandoned Simeon in prison in Egypt as long as he had food in his home. The Septuagint and the Samaritan Bible resolve, or at least soften, the problem by reading the Bible's acher as echad, the one, replacing the Hebrew's letter resh with the graphologically similar daled. I am bereaved, I am bereaved. Jacob bewails, I will be bereaved for Benjamin because of the uncertainty of what will occur to him, as I was bereaved of Joseph and Simeon. Verse 15, Onkelos led, rather than allow the notion that the brothers took Benjamin like an inanimate object, our Targumist substitutes led, as in verse 13. 2. Onkelos inserts the implied term to, as in verse 18. stood before Joseph. Radok imagines a market scene before Joseph invited his brothers to his house. The brothers spied Joseph on the way to their lodgings and noticed that he saw them but said nothing to them. This frightened them because they suspected that Joseph must be angry at them because of the money in their sacks. And that is the Torah reading with Onkelos on the Torah. And now I will read the daily wisdom on the Parshiot, the wisdom of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, on exactly what verses I just read. This is the fifth reading. What I just read was Genesis chapter 42, verse 19, through chapter 43, verse 15. Jacob sent his sons, except Benjamin, to Egypt to buy grain. Joseph's brothers did not recognize him. Joseph threatened not to receive them the next time without Benjamin. This way he could invent an excuse to keep Benjamin in Egypt and thereby see if his brothers would be prepared to fight in order to free Benjamin. If they would be, it would prove that they had overcome their jealousy of Rachel's sons. When Joseph's brothers heard his threat, they assumed that it was God's punishment for having thrown him into a pit and having sold him as a slave. The title of this daily wisdom on the Parshiot is called Sensitivity to Our Soul. Joseph's brothers said to one another, "We saw our brother's anguish when he pleaded with us, but we did not listen." During its life in the body, the divine soul's consciousness is constricted by the body's mundane perspective. The soul's mission in life is to refine both the body and the world at large. Fulfilling this mission enables the soul to ascend in the afterlife to a spiritual level higher than the one on which it existed prior to its life in this world. Consequently, as long as we remain true to the purpose of life, the soul is happy to endure the spiritual pain of existing inside a body. When, however, we ignore our divine mission, the soul suffers needlessly. Allegorically, our indifference to our soul's pain is comparable to Joseph's brothers ignoring his pleas to rescue him from the pit. Conversely, when we listen to our soul's plea, we alleviate its pain and hasten the advent of the final and ultimate redemption. And that is the reading of the Daily Wisdom by the Lubavitcher Rebbe and Onkelos on the Torah. Laila Tov.